Welcome back, viewers. In last 3 episodes, we have been talking about the knowledge of absolute truth as the backbone of Bhagavad Gita. However, we say it's absolute, it must be universal and not just people belonging to a particular religion or a particular caste or a creed. Besides, last episode of Karma Yoga was focused towards yoga of action, whereas we ended chapter 2 by accepting that knowledge is the true essence of any action. That is the yoga of knowledge. Jnana Yoga. So, is it the Karma Yoga, yoga of action, that is superior, or Jnana Yoga, the yoga of knowledge? Which one will pave our road to a content life? I know it's very confusing. In fact, it is one of the reasons why young generations is reluctant to read any philosophical text. Our lives are so involved in fetching the happiness from the material world by buying house, property, car, or even clothes to satisfy our sense of possession that we even forget the basic virtue of humanity. We forget that rather than conning our loved ones for material possessions, what we give up against this greed is a lot more valuable. Most of the relationships, be it friends or partners or whatever, if you see it closely, the main reason behind the breakup of our relationship is the material object, which stands zero value at the time of death. A house will eventually perish, a car will eventually be worn out, and we won't be able to take the property along with us when we die. So, what is the reason behind these witty actions that we tend to perform time to time? I believe it's a lack of knowledge about absolute that compels us to perform such sinful actions. That is why knowledge is superior to action. We must be aware that this whole universe is made up of just two components, that is material and spiritual components, mankind and spirit of sacrifice, that we talked about in chapter 3, matter and energy, or on cosmos level, dark matter and dark energy, Shiv and Shakti, yin and yang. If we are aware of this knowledge, we will never even think of performing a sinful action or conning someone or cheating someone or even lying to someone. This knowledge is not just true in today's world, but it has been true since eons, even before the existence of mankind. You might ask, if it is true for millions and billions of years and there was no mankind back then, how can someone con another then? Well, this chapter is focused towards breaking the barrier of our imagination and enter the realm of universe rather than restricting ourselves only to planet Earth. Thanks for watching 4th episode of Bhagavad Gita, which will shed light on the ultimate yoga that we need to perform all actions, which is Jnana Yoga. We ended our last chapter with the acceptance that intellect and subduing the mind, that is controlling the mind by logical reasoning, can kill our eternal enemy of desire, which is hardest to overcome. This is the knowledge what we were seeking for. Let's continue further. I would like to illustrate this chapter with the likes of Buddha, who was able to attain absolute knowledge of existence. If you are aware of the story of Buddha, he was a philosopher, a spiritual teacher, and a religious leader who lived in ancient India from 5th to 4th century BCE. Buddha was born in an aristocratic family in a Shankya clan, but eventually renounced his lay life. According to Buddhist traditions, after several years of meditation, he was awakened to understand the mechanism which keeps people trapped in the cycle of rebirth. Buddha was able to teach humanity a middle way between the sense object and the spirit of sacrifice, which we have been talking about. That's self-discipline. Self-discipline comes from the sacrifice which we are able to do in our day-to-day life. He taught a spiritual path that included ethical training and medieval practice such as mindfulness. Buddha was also critiqued by Brahmins and Hindus of his time because he did not really support religion. A couple of centuries after his death, he was titled as Buddha. Buddha means awakened one, enlightened one. His real name was Siddhartha Gautama. Let's continue further, and as the chapter progresses, I will also tell the story of Buddha. While Krishna was shedding light on Jnana Yoga to Arjuna, he said, "I have revealed this immortal yoga to Vivasana, sun god, who conveyed this to Manu, his son, who eventually imparted this knowledge to his own son Ikshvaku." These names which I just said are from Vedic literature of Srimad Bhagavatam. You must read it. My interpretation of this verse in terms of modern science is based on Big Bang Theory. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section. But our scientists have recently confirmed the existence of dark matter as well as dark energy, which are the prime components of the entire universe that is formed. In chapter 3 verse 10, we talk about the creation of mankind, which is matter, say dark matter, and spirit of sacrifice, say dark energy. Board this train of thoughts with me and let's dive deeper into the conversation. Krishna says, does transmitting in succession from father to son this yoga remain knowledge to the royal sages? Through long lapse of time, this yoga has lost to the world. This same ancient yoga, which is the supreme secret, has this day been imparted to you by me because you are my devotee and friend. Arjuna said, you are born recently, while the birth of Vivasana dates back to remote antiquity. How then I am supposed to believe that you imparted this yoga at the beginning of creation? Well, Arjuna does make sense. The passage of time that Krishna is mentioning can be the time from Big Bang till the birth of Vivasana. The sun is the god of our solar system that gave birth to all the planets. If we personify all the celestial objects, each of them have a definite cycle of birth and death. Manu being the father of mankind, the king of planet Earth and forefather of Raghu dynasty, in which Ramchandra appeared. Ramchandra was the incarnation of Lord Vishnu, same as Krishna but in a different yuga. But that story is for some other episode. Krishna says, Arjuna, you and I have passed through many births. I remember them all, you do not remember. Though birthless and immortal and the Lord of all beings, I manifest myself through my nature, Prakriti, that we talked about in last episode, under my control. Arjuna, whenever righteousness is on decline, unrighteousness is on rise, I body myself forth. My interpretation to this verse is from the celestial level to the quantum level, from social level to the organ level. All those great men, be it Rama, Krishna, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Guru Nanak from ancient times, or be it Albert Einstein, Leonardo da Vinci, Mahatma Gandhi, and even Elon Musk from modern times, they have helped to uplift humanity in their times with their actions, their karma. Even in our blood, when there is an entry of a virus, a special cell of immune system called a T cell circulates looking for infections. The T cell releases psychotoxic factors to kill the infected cell when it finds there's a virus, and therefore prevents the survival of invading virus. I feel on all these levels, it's Krishna that body himself to prevent the unrighteousness, for the protection of virtuous, for the extirpation of evildoers, and for the establishment of dharma, righteousness, on a firm footing. I am born from age to age. Arjuna, my birth and activities are divine. He who knows this in reality is not reborn on leaving this body but comes to me, completely rid of attachment, fear, anger, wholly absorbed in me, depending on me, and purified by the penance of wisdom. Many have become one with me even in the past. Arjuna, howsoever men seek me, even so do I approach them, for all men follow my path in every way. In this world of human being, men seeking the fruitification of their activities worship the gods, for success born of actions follows quickly. Since I have no craving for the fruits of my actions, actions do not contaminate me. Even he who does know me in reality is not bounded by actions. Action was performed even by ancient seekers of liberation. Therefore, do you also perform actions as have been performed by the ancients from antiquity? Besides, what is action and what is inaction? Even men of intelligence are puzzled over this question. I shall expound you to the truth about action, knowing which you will be freed from this evil effect. He who sees inaction in action and action in inaction is wise among men and is a yogi who performed all the actions. To understand this verse, we need to dive into Buddha's life. I will assume that you are aware of Buddha's life journey to keep this video to the point. If not, you can let me know in the comment section and maybe I can make another video on his life as well. The source of Siddhartha Gautama's life, his name before he was known as Buddha, have been conflicting over a bunch of traditional biographies. But we will go with Buddha Charitra, an epic poem. According to this biography, on the path of Bodhisattva, which means the path of being an awakened, he renounced all his material possessions despite of being a prince to fulfill his spiritual quest. He lived in remote jungles during his spiritual striving. During that time, after realizing the meditative dhyana was the right path to awakening, Gautama discovered the middle way, a path of moderation that was away from extremes of self-indulgence and self-mortification. That means punishing your own self. He was able to reach this level of meditative state by renouncing the material world, his castle, his wife, his son, his entire family, and just sitting at one place for months to meditate. His inaction was his action because he was able to perform all his bodily and spiritual duties like a yogi that we talked in chapter 2. Even all the wise call him a sage, whose undertaking are all free from desires and thoughts of material world. He who has totally given up attachment to actions and their fruits no longer depends on the world and is content forever. I believe that is how Buddha was able to concentrate as he was content in his own self. He may do nothing at all, though fully engaged in action. Having subdued by all his mind and body, given up all objects of enjoyment and free from craving of fruits for life, he who performs sheer bodily actions do not incur any sin, like Buddha did during his meditation phase. The Karma Yogi, who is content with whatever he got, is free from jealousy, rose above from joy or grief, is balanced in success and failure, is not bound by his actions. All his actions get dissolved entirely into Krishna's consciousness, who is free from attachment and has no self-identification, whose mind is established in knowledge of self and who works merely for the sake of sacrifice. I already introduced you to the concept of Brahma as a part of chapter 3 verse 10. Krishna says, in the practice of seeing Brahma everywhere as a form of sacrifice, we need to acknowledge that Brahma is the fire, Brahma is the oblation, and Brahma itself is the sacrificer as well as sacrifice. He is the ultimate goal. Some yogis duly offer sacrifice only in the shape of worship to gods. Some of them into the fire of Brahma, the very sacrifice in the shape of self through the sacrifice known as perception of identity. We also talked about this concept of perception in chapter 2. Some perform sacrifice with material possessions like Steve Jobs. Some offer sacrifice in the shape of austerities. Some through practice of yoga. Some strive for soul, observe vows like Mahatma Gandhi. Some perform sacrifice in the shape of wisdom like Stephen Hawking through the study of texts. Even the act of exhalation and inhalation is a type of sacrifice by the practice of pranayama, that is called breath control. Yogis who enjoy the nectar that has been left over after the performance of a sacrifice attains the eternal Brahma, like Buddha. A man who does not offer sacrifice is not happy in this world. How can that person be happy in other worlds? Many such sacrifices have been mentioned in Vedas that involve the action of mind, senses, and body. Once you are aware of the truth about all three of them, you shall be freed from the bondage of action through their performance, of course. Sacrifice through knowledge is the superior to sacrifice performed with material things. For all actions without exception accumulate in knowledge. When you have achieved enlightenment, ignorance will delude you no more. In the light of that knowledge, you will see the entire creation, first within your own self and then within me. Even though you were the most sinful of all sinners, this knowledge alone would carry you like a raft across all your sins. As the blazing fire turns the fuel to ashes, even so the fire of knowledge turns all actions to ashes. On earth, there is no purifier as great as knowledge. He would have attained the purity of heart through prolonged practice of Karma Yoga, automatically sees the light of truth in the self in course of time. And he who has mastered his senses is exclusively devoted to his practice and is full of faith, attains knowledge. Having revealed this truth, he immediately attains supreme peace in form of all God realizations. He who lacks this discrimination is devoid of faith and has possessed all the doubts, has lost the spiritual path, because for doubting souls there is neither this world or nor the world beyond where they can find their happiness. Arjuna, actions do not bind him who has dedicated all his actions to God according to the spirit of Karma Yoga, whose doubts have been dispelled by the wisdom and is self-possessed. Therefore, Arjuna, slashing to pieces with the swords of wisdom this doubt in your heart born of ignorance, establish yourself in Karma Yoga in the shape of even-mindedness and stand up for the fight. This is how Krishna was able to explain Arjuna that the yoga of knowledge will help you to reach the yoga of karma. Karma, an action performed without a self-motive, a selfless deed, is a form of sacrifice. There are different forms of such sacrifices performed by great yogis over a period of time. However, sacrifice under the influence of knowledge is the highest form. It is this supreme knowledge that compelled Gautama to discover path of moderation away from the extremes of self-indulgence and self-mortification, which paved his path to nirvana. Nirvana is a state of mind which is seen as extinguishing of the fires of desire, hatred and ignorance that keep the cycle of suffering and rebirth going. With this, we have ended chapter 4. I know that I'm getting too technical and I'm trying my level best to simplify this concept as much as possible. I would love to know your feedback in comments about how I can improve. I consider myself totally ineligible to give this explanation of Bhagavad Gita, but I think Krishna has chosen me to make this YouTube series, so I'm doing my best. Thank you and have a good one. Let me know in the comment section how am I doing. See you next week.